The banquet hall was a glittering cage, chandeliers dripping light over a sea of expectant faces. I stood at the head table, my fiancée's hand in mine, her diamond ring catching the glow as applause thundered for our engagement toast. Then her grip tightened, and in one shattering moment, she whispered, "I can't do this, Ethan," before announcing to the room that she loved someone else, a man. The silence that followed was deafening. My chest burned as every eye in the room turned to me. Ethan Caldwell, 28, the small-town architect with a life plan now crumbling. My tailored suit felt like a costume, and the weight of 200 guest stares pinned me in place. Clara, my fiancée of 2 years, stood trembling, her blonde curls falling loose from their elegant updo as she apologized, her voice breaking. "It's not you, Ethan. It's him." She gestured vaguely toward the back of the room, where a man I didn't recognize stood frozen, his face pale. I didn't know his name then, but I'd learn it soon enough. Julian Harper. I forced a smile, the kind you muster when the world splits open beneath you. "It's okay." I lied, my voice steady despite the chaos inside. "I wish you happiness." The words tasted like ash, but I said them because that's what you do when you're Ethan Caldwell, reliable, composed, the guy who holds it together. The room erupted in whispers as I walked out, my steps measured, my heart a riot. Outside, the autumn air in Rochester, New York, hit me like a slap. The city's historic district, with its cobblestone streets and glowing street lamps, felt like a stage set for someone else's life. I loosened my tie, my breath visible in the chilly night, and leaned against a brick wall, trying to piece together what had just happened. Clara had been my anchor, my high school sweetheart, my partner through late-night study sessions and cross-country moves. We planned a life, a house by Lake Ontario, kids, a dog. Now, that future was gone, and I was left with questions I wasn't ready to ask. I didn't notice him at first, the man from the back of the room. Julian Harper, 30, stood a few feet away, his hands shoved into the pockets of a navy peacoat. His hazel eyes caught the streetlight, sharp yet hesitant, like he was debating whether to approach. "I'm sorry," he said finally, his voice low, carrying a faint southern drawl. "I didn't mean for this to happen." I straightened, my jaw tight. "You're the guy she loves?" The words came out sharper than I meant, but I didn't care. He nodded, looking away, his dark hair falling over his forehead. He was taller than me, lean, with the kind of quiet intensity that made you notice him even when he wasn't trying. A professor, I'd later learn, teaching literature at the university. "I didn't know she was engaged," Julian said, his voice steady but laced with guilt. "Not until a month ago. She said she'd tell you, but..." He trailed off, and I saw it. The weight he carried, the same kind I felt. I didn't want to be the reason for this. "Then why are you here?" I snapped, my anger flaring. I wasn't mad at him, not really, but he was the closest target. He didn't flinch, just held my gaze, and something in his eyes, raw, unguarded, made my chest tighten for a different reason. "I don't know," he admitted. "I just couldn't stay away." We stood there, two strangers bound by the wreckage of one woman's choice, the night stretching around us like a question neither of us could answer. I didn't know then that Julian Harper would become the axis of my world, or that the pain of that night was only the beginning. The next morning, I woke to a flood of texts, friends checking in, family asking if I was okay, Clara's apologies piling up unread. I ignored them all, pulling on running shoes and heading to Highland Park. The lilacs were gone by October, but the paths were alive with crimson leaves, and I needed to move, to outrun the ache in my chest. I didn't expect to see Julian there, sitting on a bench with a book, his scarf loose around his neck. He looked up as I passed, and our eyes locked for a moment too long. "Ethan, right?" he called out, closing his book. I stopped, reluctant, my breath heavy from the run. "I'm not stalking you, I swear," he said with a small, nervous smile. "I come here to think." I didn't want to talk to him. He was a reminder of everything I'd lost. But something about his voice, soft, earnest, made me stay. "What do you want, Julian?" I asked, wiping sweat from my brow. "To explain," he said. "Clara and I, it wasn't planned. We met at a lecture series. She was auditing my class on American poetry. One coffee turned into late-night talks, and he paused, searching for words. I fell for her. I thought she was free. I wanted to hate him, but his honesty disarmed me. She wasn't, I said flatly. But she made her choice." He nodded, his expression heavy. "I'm not here to defend her. I just thought you deserved to hear it from me." I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to walk away, to leave him and Clara and the whole mess behind. But another part, a quieter, more dangerous part, wanted to know more about this man who'd upended my life. "What's your deal, Julian?" I asked, crossing my arms. "Why do you care what I think?" He looked at me, his hazel eyes searching mine. "Because I know what it's like to have your heart broken in front of everyone." That stopped me cold. There was a story there, one he didn't know me but offered anyway. We ended up sitting on that bench, talking for hours, about Clara, about heartbreak, about the lives we thought we'd have. He told me about growing up in Savannah, about coming out as gay in a small southern town, about the fiancée who left him at the altar 5 years ago. I told him about my childhood in Rochester, about building tree houses with my dad, about the pressure to be the perfect son. It was the kind of conversation you have with someone you've known forever, not a stranger you met the night before. By the time the sun dipped low, I realized I didn't hate Julian Harper. I wasn't sure what I felt, but it wasn't hate. Over the next few weeks, Rochester became a map of unexpected encounters. Julian and I kept crossing paths, at the coffee shop on East Avenue, the library where I sketched building designs, the park where I ran. Each time, we talked a little longer, laughed a little easier. He had a way of listening that made you feel seen, like every word mattered. I started to notice things about him. The way his hands moved when he talked about Whitman or Dickinson, the way his laugh softened the edges of my anger. Clara tried to reach out, leaving voicemails I deleted without listening. I wasn't ready to face her, not when I was still untangling what her betrayal meant. But with Julian, it was different. He didn't push, didn't pry. He just showed up. One evening, he invited me to a poetry reading at a local bookstore. I went, telling myself it was just to get out of the house. But when he read a line from Walt Whitman, we were together. I forget the rest. His eyes found mine in the crowd, and my heart stuttered. Afterward, we walked along the Genesee River, the city lights reflecting on the water. Why do you keep doing this? I asked, stopping under a street lamp. Hanging out with me. You don't owe me anything. Julian shoved his hands in his pockets, his breath visible in the cold. Maybe I like your company, he said simply. Maybe I see something in you that's worth knowing. I laughed, shaking my head. Your trouble, Harper. Only the good kind, he replied, his smile crooked and warm. That night, I lay awake, replaying his words, his smile, the way my pulse quickened when he looked at me. I'd never questioned my attraction before. Clara had been my world, my definition of love. But Julian was stirring something new, something I wasn't ready to name. It scared me, but it also felt like waking up. By November, Rochester was cloaked in early frost, the air sharp with the promise of winter. My days were a blur of work, designing eco-friendly community centers for a local firm, and nights spent dodging Clara's calls. But Julian was a constant, a thread weaving through the chaos. We'd fallen into a rhythm. Coffee at Java's Cafe, walks through Mount Hope Cemetery, debates about Frost versus Eliot over cheap diner food. He was unlike anyone I'd ever known, thoughtful, intense, with a quiet fire that made me want to keep up. One evening, at a jazz bar on Gibbs Street, the truth hit me. Julian was laughing at my terrible attempt to name the saxophone player, his eyes crinkling, and I couldn't look away. My chest ached, not with the pain of Clara's betrayal, but with something sharper, more alive. I was falling for him. The realization was a lightning bolt, terrifying, exhilarating, and utterly inconvenient. I was straight, wasn't I? I'd loved Clara, planned a life with her. But the way Julian's presence steadied me, the way his voice lingered in my thoughts, told a different story. I didn't say anything that night, just sipped my beer and let the music drown out my confusion. But Julian noticed. He always did. You okay, Ethan? He asked as we stepped into the cold, the neon sign buzzing above us. Yeah, I lied, shoving my hands in my jacket. Just thinking. He didn't push, but his silence invited me to speak. I didn't. Not yet. The turning point came at a holiday market in Cornhill. The streets were alive with string lights, vendors selling cider and handmade scarves, and kids chasing each other through the crowd. Julian had dragged me there, insisting I needed festive cheer. I grumbled, but went, secretly glad for the distraction. We wandered past stalls, our shoulders brushing as we dodged the crowd. At a booth selling carved wooden ornaments, Julian picked up a tiny star, his fingers tracing its edges. My mom used to hang these on our tree, he said softly. She'd say every star was a wish you hadn't made yet. Sounds like she was a dreamer, I said, watching him. She was. His voice was quiet, heavy with memory. She passed when I was 19. Cancer. I didn't know what to say, so I just stood there, letting the moment hold us. Then, impulsively, I bought the star and handed it to him. For your next wish, I said, my voice rough. He looked at me, his eyes bright with something unspoken. Thanks, Ethan. Later, as we sat on a bench with steaming cups of cider, the market glowing around us, I couldn't hold it in anymore. Julian, I started, my heart pounding. I don't know what I'm doing here. With you. I'm not. I stopped, frustrated, the words tangling. He set his cup down, his gaze steady. You don't have to figure it all out tonight, he said. But I'm here, okay? Whatever this is. I nodded, my throat tight. For the first time, I let myself imagine what this could be. Christmas came, and with it, an invitation I couldn't ignore. Julian was hosting a small dinner at his apartment, a cozy loft in the south wedge with exposed brick and bookshelves spilling over. I arrived with a bottle of wine, my nerves jangling. The guest list was small, just a few colleagues from the university and his friend Maya, a 32-year-old graphic designer with a sharp wit and a warm laugh. The night was easy, filled with good food and better conversation. Maya teased Julian about his terrible cooking. He'd burned the first batch of potatoes, and I found myself relaxing, the weight of the past months lifting. After dinner, we ended up on the balcony, the city skyline glittering under a light snow. Julian leaned against the railing, his scarf loose, and I felt that pull again, the one that made me want to close the distance between us. You ever think about starting over? I asked, my breath clouding in the cold. All the time, he said, turning to face me. But it's not about erasing the past. It's about building something new. His words hit me hard. I'd been so focused on what I'd lost, Clara, my plans, my certainty, that I hadn't considered what I could gain. I stepped closer, my heart racing. What if I want to build something with you? Julian's eyes widened, then softened. He didn't say anything, just reached out and brushed a snowflake from my cheek. His touch was light, but it sent a jolt through me. For a moment, we just stood there, the snow falling around us, the world holding its breath. Then Maya's voice called from inside, breaking the spell. You two gonna freeze out there or what? We laughed, the tension easing, but the moment stayed with me. I was falling, and I didn't want to stop. By January, I couldn't pretend anymore. I was in love with Julian Harper. It wasn't just his laugh or his mind or the way he made me feel like I could be more than the perfect son. It was the way he saw me, flaws and all, and stayed. But admitting it meant confronting questions I'd never faced. What did it mean to love a man? Would my family, my conservative parents, my church-going sister, accept me? Would I accept myself? I started seeing a therapist, a kind woman named Dr. Patel who helped me untangle my thoughts. Love doesn't care about labels, she said during one session. It's about connection. What do you feel when you're with Julian? Alive, I said without hesitation. Like I'm finally me. She smiled. Then start there. I took her advice, letting myself lean into the feeling. Julian and I grew closer, our time together a mix of quiet moments and electric ones. One night, at a quiet diner on Park Avenue, he reached across the table and took my hand. I'm falling for you, Ethan, he said, his voice steady. I don't know where this is going, but I want to find out. My heart stopped, then raced. Me too, I said, and for the first time, I meant it without fear. But love, I learned, doesn't erase the past. Clara reappeared in February, showing up at my office with an apology and a plea. I made a mistake, she said, her eyes red-rimmed. I thought I loved Julian, but it was a fantasy. I want us back, Ethan. I stared at her, the woman I'd once planned to marry, and felt nothing. Not anger, not love, just a quiet certainty that she no longer held my heart. Clara, I said gently, you deserve to be with someone who's all in. That's not me anymore. She left, tears streaming, and I felt a strange relief. But her words lingered, stirring doubts. Was I just a rebound for Julian? Was he still in love with her? I pushed the thoughts aside, but they gnawed at me, especially when Julian canceled plans one night, saying he needed to sort some things out. The doubts grew when I saw them together at a cafe on University Avenue. They were sitting across from each other, Julian's face serious, Clara's hands gesturing wildly. My stomach twisted. I didn't stop to talk, just kept walking, but the image burned into me. That night, I didn't answer Julian's texts. He showed up at my apartment the next morning, his hair damp from the rain. You saw us, didn't you? He said, reading my face. Ethan, it's not what you think. Clara wanted closure. I told her it's over, for good. I wanted to believe him, but the fear was loud. Why didn't you tell me you were meeting her? I asked, my voice tight. I should have, he admitted, stepping closer. I didn't want to hurt you. I'm done with her, Ethan. I'm here for you. His words were a lifeline, but I wasn't ready to grab it. I need time, I said, and he nodded, his eyes heavy with understanding. The next few weeks were a test. I threw myself into work, sketching designs for a community center that would double as an LGBT youth shelter. The project felt personal, a way to make sense of my own journey. But Julian's absence was a hole I couldn't ignore. I missed his laugh, his stories, the way he challenged me to think deeper. One evening, Maya invited me to a gallery opening, her latest designs on display. Julian was there, looking tired but still magnetic in a charcoal sweater. We didn't talk much, just exchanged polite smiles, but the air between us crackled. After the event, he caught up with me outside. Can we talk? He asked. We ended up at Highland Park, the same place we'd first connected. The air was crisp, the stars bright above the bare trees. I'm scared, I admitted, my voice low. Me. It's new, and I don't know if I'm enough. Julian turned to me, his eyes fierce. You are enough, Ethan. More than enough. I'm not here because you're a replacement or a second choice. I'm here because you make me feel like I can be myself. His words broke something open in me. I stepped forward, closing the distance, and kissed him. It was tentative at first, then deeper, a collision of fear and want, and everything I'd been holding back. When we pulled apart, his smile was brighter than the stars. Spring arrived, and with it, a new rhythm. Julian and I were together, not just in stolen moments, but in a real, messy, beautiful way. We cooked terrible meals, argued about books, and planned hikes along the Finger Lakes. But the world wasn't as kind as our bubble. My parents, devout and traditional, didn't understand. It's a phase, my mom said over dinner, her voice tight. You were happy with Clara. I'm happy now, I said, my voice firm. With Julian. My dad's silence was louder than words, but my sister, Emily, squeezed my hand under the table. I'm proud of you, she whispered later, and it was enough to keep me going. At work, whispers followed me. Rochester was progressive, but not everyone was ready for Ethan Caldwell, the guy who'd gone from engaged to a woman to in love with a man. I didn't care. I had Julian, and I had myself, maybe for the first time. The real test came in May, during Rochester's Lilac Festival. The city was alive with color, the air sweet with blooms and fried dough. Julian and I wandered the stalls, his hand in mine, when we ran into Clara. She was with a new guy, her smile tentative. Ethan, she said, can we talk? Julian tensed beside me, but I nodded. We stepped aside, the festival noise fading. I'm sorry, she said, her voice small. I didn't mean to hurt you. I wasn't honest with myself. I know, I said. I forgive you. And I meant it. Her betrayal had broken me, but it had also set me free. She glanced at Julian, then back at me. You look happy, she said, and I realized she was right. Back at the festival, Julian pulled me into a dance as a street band played. His laugh was infectious, and for the first time, I didn't care who saw us. Let them stare. This was my life now. But life isn't a festival. By summer, Julian got an offer to teach at a university in Boston, a dream job, but 400 miles away. We sat in his loft, the city humming outside, and talked it through. I don't want to hold you back, I said, my voice thick. You should go. He shook his head. I'm not leaving you, Ethan. We'll figure it out. Long distance loomed, a shadow we couldn't ignore. I started looking for architecture jobs in Boston, but the market was tight, and my firm was in the middle of a major project. We made it work for a while, weekend visits, late-night calls, but the distance wore on us. One night, after a tense call where we both said things we didn't mean, I drove to Highland Park and sat on our bench, the star ornament in my pocket. I didn't know if we'd survive this. The next morning, Julian showed up at my door, his bag slung over his shoulder. I turned down Boston, he said. I want to stay here. With you. I stared at him, stunned. You can't give up your dream for me. It's not giving up, he said, stepping closer. It's choosing what matters most. We kissed, the kind of kiss that seals promises, and I knew we'd be okay. A year after Clara's confession, I stood in Highland Park again, the autumn leaves falling like they had that first night. Julian was beside me, his hand warm in mine, the star ornament now hanging on a chain around his neck. We'd built something real, a life of shared mornings, quiet fights, and loud laughter. My parents were coming around, slowly, and my sister was planning our first family dinner with Julian included. The community center I designed opened that month, its ribbon-cutting ceremony packed with local leaders and kids from the LGBT youth program. Julian stood in the crowd, his smile proud, and I realized this was the life I'd been searching for, not the one I'd planned with Clara, but the one I'd found with him. As we walked home, the city glowing around us, Julian stopped under a street lamp. You know, he said, his voice soft. I used to think love was about finding someone who fit your plans. But you changed the plan. I laughed, pulling him close. You're the best detour I ever took. We stood there, wrapped in each other, the world moving on without us. Clara's betrayal had been a storm, but it had led me to Julian, to myself. And in that moment, I knew that love wasn't about perfection or certainty. It was about showing up, choosing each other, and finding meaning in the unexpected.